Hi everyone, thanks so much for joining. We'll just give it a couple minutes and let any stragglers join us. All right, so I think we'll get this show on the road. So yeah, thanks so much for joining us for this webinar. We'll be covering the upcoming changes to Waterford Hospital lab orders in Health One. So we'll start with a overview of that, and then overview of that change, and then any prerequisites you might need, and then we'll go into a demonstration on Health One, and there'll be time for a Q&A at the end. We're joined by colleagues from across the HSE and Waterford Hospital. They'll be on hand to answer any questions you may have. You'll notice there's a questions tab in the corner there. If you click that and then type in your question, we should be able to answer that as we go along, if not at the end. And also, this session is being recorded, so if you miss anything or you have colleagues who can't join us, you'll be able to share this with them afterwards as well. So with that, I'll hand over to my colleague John, who's our support lead for Health One.
Hi everyone, I'm just going to share my screen out here. Now, so I'm just going to quickly do a little look at the prerequisites here first of all. So as you can see on the screen there, this is the checklist that you would have been sent out to fill in advance of doing the lab orders in Health One and on the system there. So first, I'm really just going to go over the hardware and software parts of it there. You will have to send in a lab order, a test one in advance before doing the lab orders there in the system. So just to start off with, you've got your latest software version. So that's the version of Health One that you have. You need to have a valid HealthLink certificate on any PC that's going to be doing lab orders, and you'll need it selected, and you'll be able to get those from HealthLink if you don't have one already. You'll need a printer set up for every PC that the orders are going to be placed on. So you'll need a printer on whatever PC is doing the order, and you'll need a default printer for A4 printing within the software. So not necessarily the Windows default there. So I'm just going to go back into Health One here. So you're probably familiar with the screen if you know Health One. So I'm just in the appointments diary. So I'm just going to go through those prerequisites again there inside of Health One. So the software version, you can see up at the top here what version you're on at the moment. I'm probably a few ahead there because this is a testing environment. But if you click on Help and then Web Update, that will check right there and then what version of the software you're on. If you see a green tick beside your version, that means you're on the current version that you have there. If you don't see a green tick, then just click refresh, and what it'll do is it'll pull down the latest version for you then. And if you just close out of that window, it'll start installing it for you when you close Health One. So then after that there, you've got your HealthLink certificate. If you click on Tools and click on Options here, and then go down to HealthLink in the middle here. So this would be where you could put in your HealthLink information. If you've got a HealthLink cert installed from HealthLink there, you can put in your username, your password, and your PIN, and select whichever certificate it was in this drop down here. So then with regards to printing, to select the printer up inside a Health One, if you go File and Print Setup, you can then select whichever printer you want by clicking on these three little dots on the right hand side here and selecting whichever printer. I'm just going to use print to PDF there, but they'll appear in the drop down whatever ones you've installed. So now those are basically the prerequisites for Health One from the software point of view. So I'm just going to go through now doing an actual lab order in the Health One software. So I've got a few patients set up here for this. I'm just going to go into this patient here. Now, obviously, it's not a real patient there. It's for testing only. So it's a lab order testing. If you wanted to do anything with their demographics, if you just click on this little guy over here, or you can actually just go into the identification chapter as well. But if you click on this little guy here, you can edit anything about the name. Just to say one thing, if say a name has something like that there, like in brackets, the system doesn't really like that there, brackets or dashes, that might cause an issue. So if you just remove them, it'll basically work after that there. And of course, a real patient would have a PPS number and an IHI number as well there, and they need to have a mobile number filled in as well to be able to do the lab orders. So I'm just going to do a lab order now in this patient. So I'm just going to create a new transaction here on the left hand side. Just call it lab. And then there's two places you can do the lab order from. You can either click on this little icon over here, the lab request icon, and there's a drop down there and you can select HealthLink lab request. Or also you can go to the lab request on the left hand side here, and it's the same icon there for that. I'm just going to click on that. So this brings up this window here where you can select which lab order you want to do. At the top here, you can select your referring HCP. So if you had if you were a nurse, you could select the doctor you want to do it under just by clicking the drop down and selecting them there, or you can actually type it in as well. So I'm just going to select the hospital. So in our case here, it would be University Hospital Waterford. But say if you moved somewhere else, it would just be a matter of selecting whichever hospital it would be that would be live at the time there. But I'm going to select University Hospital Waterford here now, and the referrals lab order. So what this is saying down here now is that there's no patient called testing lab order on the Waterford Hospital system. So it gives you an option here to create a new patient. Now, if there was a patient there, you could select it, where it would say list of patients here. So you could select, so say if you've done...
John, sorry.
Yeah.
It will always pull the information from the labs, from the GP system. You will always have to click that create patient. It does not search HealthLink patients because it brings it's bringing the most up-to-date information from the GP system itself.
Right.
Just to clarify.
Well, then in that case, just to go create new patients in that case.
At the moment.
Right. So in that case, then you just go create new patient every time there, and it'll create a patient with the name that you have. So if I do that there, it brings up this window here, which is where you can actually do the lab request. So you can see the demographics at the top here, and you can see there's various options here. Pregnancy unknown, you can select that in the drop down. The GP out of hours number, you can put in a number there if you wish. You've got your clinical details here, which need to be filled in. I'm just going to put in testing, but of course you put in correct clinical details there. So down here is where you can select the labs that you want to do for that there particular patient. So I'm just going to select one or two labs here. I'm obviously not clinical, so I'm just selecting one or two here. You would obviously select the correct ones for whatever condition it would be. You've got your priority up here. routine or urgent, you've got the time the specimen was collected and the date the specimen was collected as well. So if you wanted to, say, put in a different time there, that they were collected earlier, or you're going to collect them in a while, you could put that in. I'm just going to change that to 12. And then when you're happy with what you have there, just click review. So now these are the labs that you're actually going to be collecting and putting into the sample bag. And if you're happy with that there, you can click on a test. If you want to change anything, just go commit order here. So when you go commit order, you get this window here of what you want to actually pop into the sample bag, and click OK. So now it'll bring up your option to print. I'm just going to cancel that because I'm not going to print anything, but you would print off. And this is what you want. This is the lab order request form. So this is what you'll be putting into the sample bag there with the barcode at the top here. And then when you click close on that there, this puts it into the patient's chart. You can see the lab request submission. You've got a little egg timer beside it. Basically, that will change to a green tick when the labs come back for that particular patient. If you say you needed to print this form off again for some reason, if you just double click on lab request there, it brings up this where you can actually print it again by clicking on print down here at the bottom. So that is basically how you would do a lab order in a patient inside of Health One. You might say if you had gone into an older transaction, say one from a few days ago, when you go to do the lab request, you'll get a little warning saying, are you sure you want to do it in this window or in this transaction, or do you want to create a brand new transaction? If you create a brand new transaction, it'll pop it in there for you. So that's really all there is to doing a lab order inside of Health One. So I'll just pass you back to Damien and Mary if they have any questions or anything like that there.
John, I wonder, would you show how to create a favorite panel?
Oh, yes, of course. I'll do that there right now. So it's the same basic thing you do. You go into doing your lab request. Just going to select Waterford again here in the lab order and create my new patient. So it brings you to the same screen, and you see here at the top you've got manage favorites here, and these are the favorites that you can select a favorite just by clicking this drop down. So if I select, say, full bloods, this is one that was previously created there, you can see them like that, and again you can amend the test. But if you want to create a brand new one there, if you just go manage favorites up the top here and just go create new list, you can actually edit these lists and delete them by just clicking on them again. But if you go create new list, whatever name you want to put in for it that you will remember yourself, and just go next, and you get the same screen again. You also, so you can select whichever labs you want. Just one thing I might not mention as well, you've got your priority 1 labs, you've got your priority 2 and priority 3, and these are basically the labs that you can select on the system there. So I'm just going to select 1 or 2 again randomly, and you can review. And so now if I want to save that favorite, just click save favorite over here on the right hand side. And if I go back to my lab order page and click on my drop down for favorites, you can see that new one I created is just there ready to go. If I click on that, you can see there it's ready to commit that order as well. I don't think I put in clinical details there, but if I had, it would let me carry on there. So that is probably, and basically if you cancel out of it for any reason, you're going to get that there button there, and that means it hasn't gone through. So that is probably a bit more everything there is to be in a Health One lab order there. So now I'll pass you back. If there's anything else, sure, just let me know.
Thank you, John.
John,
There is a... Oh, go ahead, Elaine, sorry.
Sorry, this is Mary. It's just to show that there are 3 pages. It's priority 1, 2, and 3. And the most frequently requested stuff are on page 1. And the more esoteric is going down through pages 2 and 3. So it's just to be aware that there are 3 pages there in terms of priority, as agreed by the GPs themselves. And the other thing maybe you could explain to people is that Some of the order codes are going to be different coming back. The descriptions are going to be very similar, but there may be some mapping that would have to be done in terms of any queues that are set up or in terms of the overall profile name that would be coming back. So if there's anything that you want to highlight about that.
It's kind of hard to show that there because I wouldn't have any labs to download here, but we do have a video that I can, that Damien can pop up there that will show how to do lab mapping. Basically, if you get a new lab back from the lab and it's not matched, you'll see a tiny little T right beside the name of it there. And that means that the Health One doesn't know what that lab is if the name has changed. If you right click on that there particular lab, there's an option at the bottom to remap lab item. And if you select remap lab item and then put in the name of the lab that it should be matching up to, it'll then match it up for you there. But as I said, I have a video of that there that we can send on if needs be.
They'll come across that as part of the onboarding process anyway. So.
Yeah. And if they have any difficulties here, as I said there, if they just have a look at the lab and if it's not, say, coming up on their CDM or anything like that there, if they look at the lab itself and it has a tiny T beside it, it just needs to be remapped, and they can, of course, give us a call and support, and we can show you how you can do that there if you have any difficulty at all.
We do have a question there in the chat from Mary Tynan. What about samples for St. Luke's Hospital in Kilkenny?
So Waterford is the regional testing hospital for this region. So any GP samples are tested here. If you have a local arrangement with Kilkenny, that'll stand for the minute, but Kilkenny isn't on the GP order com as we're the regional site for GP testing.
Thanks, Elaine. I can't see any more questions in the chat, but whilst we have you, Elaine and Mary, is there anything in particular that the users need to be mindful of ahead of this change?
Well, just to let everybody know that we will be sending out the specimen bags to the practices as we onboard you. We'll also be sending out the information, the site readiness checklist that John showed you there, and the information on how to set up the test patient. And we'll do the validation check, and then we'll be, over the course of the next month or so, onboarding all the practices and going through the different things with you. And there'll be some instructions specific for Waterford. There's also on there an order not listed option. I don't know, John, if you want to just show them that.
On page 3.
All right, so let me just bring up another lab order here.
It's just for when, if you don't see an order there on.
Oh, give me 1 second here until I get it loaded up here again.
And just one thing to emphasize, that if you're placing multiple orders, you should have a transaction for each one so that you can see each of the transactions in your list on the left.
Now you've got your order not listed here.
I can't see what stage you're at. I couldn't get in on the thing, John, so I'm on the phone. So
right.
If you have the order literally...
Sorry there, Mary.
If you have it there, it's a case of typing in the request that you want to add.
Right. So I'm seeing the order not listed. You would type that in on the clinical details, I take it?
No, when you click on order not listed, a box pops up, a free text box.
Yeah, it's not popping up on my test system here, but that could well be because it's a test system there.
Yeah, so on the live versions, when you click order not listed, a box pops up, and that's the prompt to put in whatever the specific request would be it something like, for instance, calcium, and then that'll come into the system. We'll be able to see that that's an order that you've wanted that isn't on the drop down, and we can add it in. And just to be mindful there that if it's an unusual sample test, that there might be specific sample requirements for it whether it might be urine or it could be an EDTA that needs to be in a certain amount of time. But all that detail is available in the user manual, and there's a link to that at the top of the page.
Which I take would be the lab order guidelines on the list here.
That's it, John. Yeah.
Yep. I'm not sure if the hyperlink is going to work on my test system there, but on the live, it's effective. If you click on that there, it's going to pop up that document for you.
We do have a couple more questions there in the chat. They're both fairly similar, I think. Thomas Lynch is asking what goes on the bottles, and then Mary Tynan is asking, do we still label the blood bottles with name, date of birth, etc.?
Yeah, absolutely. So keep labeling your specimen receptacles as you always have, like the blood bottles, the urine containers, fecal containers. Label them as you have with the patient name, date of birth. And the form itself will have the patient details printed out on it.
Just one thing in terms of patient details is just to emphasize that there has to be 2 lines of address for the patient, and you can't have any brackets or dashes. It causes an error on HealthLink when you try to submit the request. If there's something wrong that's in the patient information that isn't, like, so if you have Mary Ann, it's either all one word or a space in between.
I did show it on the thing earlier. Brackets like after a name, for example,
Okay.
Mary Ann, and then with brackets Mary afterwards. It wouldn't like the brackets or the slashes, as you said there.
Yeah.
And we have another question in there. Will this automatically include Health One's lab result tracking function?
Yeah, basically it does there. I can show that on the screen. You've got the same lab request window you would have had previously there, and when the labs come back, it will fill in those for you again, as you may have been doing with the lab request function.
And then Debbie Franks is asking, is it necessary for a mobile number or would a landline suffice?
I think it needs a mobile or a landline. It just needs to have a number against it. I tried to add a patient earlier on without a number, and basically it was the first thing that came up when I tried to do the lab order was a prompt to pop in a number and permission to receive a message in that number. So it would need a mobile.
Okay, if there are no further questions, I think we can probably wrap up. It doesn't look like any are coming through. So yeah, we'll make a stop there. Thanks so much for everyone joining us, and thanks to the team at the HSC for joining us as well and answering the questions. Like I said at the beginning, this session has been recorded and this will be sent out to you. So if you've missed anything or you need to send this on to some colleagues, you can, and that'll be made available to you. But thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you soon.
Sorry, John, can I just say one thing? And that's
Yep.
in relation to the HealthLink cert. So for every user that's placing a lab order, they will need the HealthLink cert on the PC that they're placing the orders from for the users that are doing it.
Yeah. And as I said earlier, the options for that are in Tools, Options, and HealthLink, where you can pop in your username, password, and so on.
Thanks, John.
All right.
All right, I think we can probably leave that there then. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, guys. All right. Bye now.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.